Alright, what's going on everyone? I'm back here again with another video, and this one's going to be on another list of 10 of the worst albums I think in rock and metal that I could think of, at least in my opinion. You guys may have differing opinions on these things, and that's totally fine. I'm just here to give my opinion on 10 albums I think that were absolute failures, so let's get started. Now the first one I got here is Father of All Motherfuckers by Green Day. Now this one I think was definitely the worst album Green Day put out. I mean, they were kind of going towards something different, experimenting a bit, and there's nothing really wrong with experimenting, but the way it turned out was just like, you listen to this and it's like everything you'd hear in like a Wendy's commercial nowadays that you've heard like a billion times from a lot of these indie rock groups that they pull songs from. And really just the way it came out just wasn't anything you haven't heard before, and the vocals, the way they were produced and everything, I just couldn't stand the sound of the vocals. This album was not good, I don't think, at all, and it's even got quite a few low reviews, of course, in a lot of places, though. I will say one thing, Saviors was a great album, though. Saviors was their comeback album, so hey, at least there's that. Number 2 here, we got Metallica's Saint Anger. Now this one was when Metallica was experimenting a bit more too. This was probably the most experimentative album they've done before that. This one came out in like 2003, and it was supposed to be almost a nu metal kind of record, but it was nothing like bands like Korn did. It was like the production, especially in terms of the drums, was terrible. I can't stand the sound of the snare, and there wasn't really many impressive riffs or anything like that, and even the songwriting wasn't all that great. This album just wasn't that good, I think. I think this album was a failed experiment by Metallica. That, you know, they were trying to try something different, you know, just for fun, you could tell, maybe, but like the way it came out really just did not sit well. Number 3 here, we got Risk by Megadeth. Now this one was also sort of an experimental one, though. They were trying to go more towards like a mainstream kind of sound, I'd say, sort of, but it wasn't anything like Metallica's Black Album or anything, I don't think. They actually did it to where there's actually, you know, something that we haven't heard much of before. This album, I feel like, was just kind of put out there just to be put out there just by listening to it, you know. It wasn't anything we haven't really heard before, you know. And it just didn't have that like up in your face energy like a lot of the other albums did, like Rust in Peace and Peace Sells. And it's probably my least favorite Megadeth album. I rarely ever put this one on if I go to listen to Megadeth. It's probably the one I listen to the least. Next we got Into the Unknown by Bad Religion, another experimentative album, and this was early into Bad Religion's career. I believe it was their second record, I'm pretty sure. I could be wrong. I know it was after How Could Hell Be Any Worse, which is a great record, but this one was a flop, if there was ever a flop in the world, you know. And you can tell just by listening to this, this is not what Bad Religion was good at in terms of, you know, the type of sound that they were good at. You know, they weren't good at the progressive sound like bands like, you know, Dream Theater and Pink Floyd were. It just did not sit well, because you kind of have to be like really practicing quite a bit and everything. Not that Bad Religion didn't practice, but they didn't have like the technicalities of bands like that really to pull this off that well. So we didn't really get an album like this after that due to the fact that it flopped so much, but hey, we got Suffer after it, so this really made Bad Religion revive after that second album, so oh well, I guess. And next we got Ministries with Sympathy. Now this one was a totally failed album, I think. They were trying to go for something here, trying to put themselves out there, but you know, they were going for this fake kind of new wave thing. You got Al Jorgensen with the fake British accent he's pulling on. It's just not that good at all. It's just, it doesn't even sound like the same band, but it's like new wave, but like just in the weirdest way I think I've ever seen it. It doesn't sit well with me. It wasn't anything like the Cars or anything like the kind of new wave I actually enjoy. It wasn't like anything that was upbeat or anything. It was just weird, to say the least, and I just can't get into it. And the next one we got here is Evolved by Imagine Dragons. Now, if there was, like, the definition of the most, like, generic, like, pop rock kind of record, this one would be it. I don't even really think it was a rock record, honestly. It's more of like electronic pop, basically. This was when Imagine Dragons really, really started going downhill. You got songs like Thunder, you got songs like Believer. A lot of these songs are basically just mainstream electronic pop songs that you can't even really call rock. And I'm only including this on this list because, you know, Imagine Dragons kind of is considered sort of like a rock band, you know, but it's like pop rock. But this stuff is awful. Like, literally, if somebody put this on, like, any song from this record and, you know, said, hey, let's listen to some rock, you know, I think they were just joking. Like, I would literally think they were just joking with how bad this record is. God, that record is bad. And next we got Machine Head's Catharsis. Now this one, I feel like was Machine Head out there with a ton of rage, but it just didn't work that well with this, you know? Like, you had songs like Do or Die before that, and this record wasn't much better than Do or Die. They didn't really try that well with the lyrics. They just kind of threw a bunch of songs out there, I feel like, just to throw out a bunch of songs just because, you know, they felt some aggression inside of them for whatever reason, but didn't really plan anything out all that well, you know? And of course they had their comeback record of Kingdom and Crown, which I really enjoy, but this one I just can't. It is awful. It's probably the worst Machine Head album that's been released. Next we got Amo by Bring Me the Horizon. Now this one, what even is this? Like, it basically sounds like a lot of the old school, like, copyright-free YouTube soundtracks you'd use, but like trying to have some sort of hook, but totally failing. This record is awful. Sempiternal was probably, or the one after that, Throne, is probably the best, or the only last good record by Bring Me the Horizon. After this, I just couldn't get into it anymore. I was just like, okay, why did they even do this? Like, it's not even that good of, like, pop rock, you know? It's, like, not much better than Imagine Dragons. It's maybe slightly better, but still, it is garbage. Next one is Nickelback's Dark Horse. Now, the album before this was still kind of shit, I'll admit. All the Right Reasons. That was not that good of a record at all. But this one was even worse. This one was when Nickelback proved they really could not come up with anything original anymore, really. And it was the same record, one time after the other. And this one is god-awful. You had songs like SEX, the acronym, which totally that clever. You had Something in Your Mouth, which, God, that song is bad. It's probably one of the worst rock songs I've ever heard. And it just reminds me of a lot of bands like Winger, like how they were doing it back in the day, and people like that, but just done in a more modern sense. And it's like, no, keep that shit back then, get it the hell out of now, this shit sucks. We don't need more bands like Winger, but done in a slightly heavier form. Nickelback during their first couple albums actually weren't that bad, you know, but it's when they put out All the Right Reasons, and that thing went totally mainstream, that they were like, yeah, we don't need to really come up with anything else original. Let's just come up with the same record 5 times in a row. That'll work. And to this day, I really haven't heard anything good from them since All the Right Reasons. And the last one we got here is Winger's self-titled album. God, what more needs to be said about this one? I mean, so many songs about, you know, getting sex, getting women, you know, trying to be a big shot and everything. Not to mention that god-awful song 17. Literally, that song is just, no. I can't stand that song. Like, for so many reasons. I mean, it's about trying to get a girl who's 17. Like, just no. I mean, you just read the lyrics to this and it's like, dude, how do people actually like this, man? And the song is not catchy. It's not anything impressive, you know, it sounds like a lot of other shit you've heard in the past. from bands like this, and it's just so bad. And bands like this are why bands like Nirvana and Green Day became big in the 90s, because people were tired of crap like this. And there's plenty of other bands from back then that were like this, but Winger is probably the worst. Out of any like rock band during that time, they were probably the worst, and I just can't get into any other stuff. I just can't. It's the most generic like rock from that time that was on the radio and everything, but just done to like the lowest possible level. Winger is not my cup of tea. They are probably one of the worst rock bands I've ever heard. They are like, you know, how much I don't like Imagine Dragons now, but except in that era, they are awful. So yeah, that is it for 10 of the worst albums I think that I can think of in rock and metal. Let me know what your guys' are, and I will catch you guys later. Peace out.